Welcome everyone to Fruits of the Orchard. Tonight we're going to be learning Parshat Nitzavim. Parshat Nitzavim always comes the Shabbat before Rosh Hashanah. The sages said it that it would be like that. And in your Living with the Times this week, there'll be explanations of more about why this is. And hopefully everyone will tune into those. So we're going to do a quick overview. It's one of the shortest parshas. The next parsha, Vayelech, is the shortest parsha in the Torah. Parsha Nitzavim is very close. It's a relatively short parsha, but it is powerful. It is chock full of deep verses. And the whole book of Devarim, of Deuteronomy, we've seen over and over again, Moshe is laying forth we'll call it a choice that Am Yisrael has to make. If we listen to the words of the Torah, we listen to Hashem, then we'll get brachas, full brachas. And if we don't, the consequences are dire. We saw that in last week's parsha, beautiful blessings, but then followed by what are called the curses, 98 possible curses if we don't listen to the words of Hashem. Anyone who knows Jewish history, unfortunately, all of them came to pass. Every single one of them came to pass in real terms. So in Parshat Nitzavim, again, Moshe goes through more or less the same kind of idea, but at the end, it is full of hope, of redemption, Mashiach, returning to the land, everyone doing tshuva. And so we're going to start with the last verse of this section. And some people call it the good news here at the end of all of these curses. Again, they're only possible curses. They didn't have to happen and they don't have to happen. But they're the consequences of choices that we make. So some people call this passage the passage of tshuva, Parshat Tshuva, because again, it's saying Am Yisrael will do tshuva, and God will bring us back to the land, and just everything will be good. And it ends like this. This is just a gorgeous verse. Umal Hashem Elokecha et levavcha ve'et levav zarecha. God will circumcise your hearts and the hearts of your children. La'ahava et Hashem Elokecha, to love God your God. V'chal levavcha u'v'chal nafshecha leman chayecha. That you will love God with all your heart and all your soul, that you may live. And that's the concluding verse of this called the Parshat of Tshuva. And it continues with more blessings. So here, I'll point out right at the beginning that there are many acronyms that people have found over the ages for the month of Elul. In other words, they find 4 words that spell out the first letters, the 4 letters of Elul: Aleph, Lamed, Vav, Lamed. Excuse me. The most famous one is Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li. I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me. But one of them is in this verse. And not everyone knows this, but if you look, anyone who is following this, we're in the 30th chapter, the 6th verse. The 30th chapter, the 6th verse. And where it says, Et levavcha ve'et levav zarecha, the first letters of that God will circumcise your heart and the heart of your children. So the first letters are the aleph of et, the lamed of levavcha, the vav of the et, and the lamed of levav, spells Elul. So this is just a beautiful thing, is that the circumcision of the heart that God is guaranteeing will occur. And this is the sign of the love relationship between God and Israel. And it spells out the month of Elul. So Rav Ginsburg points out an amazing thing, that this verse has 18 words and 67 letters. By the way, this is in Fruits of the Orchard. 67 letters. 67 is Gematria, Elul. 18 is Chai. So tonight is what's called Chai Elul, the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov. And Rav Ginsburg says that this verse is, we'll call it somewhat prophetic of not only the birth of the Baal Shem Tov, but his mission that we have in the prophet Malachi, where the final verse of Malachi is that God says that Eliyahu a Navi will come before the great and awesome day, and he will return the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers. But this is already hinted to here. That's the acronym of Elul, is et levavcha ve'et levav zarecha, that God will circumcise our hearts and the hearts of our children. So this is just such a beautiful thing. And it ends with the word leman chayecha, that you will live. So chayecha is again chai. So tonight is the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov, the birthday of Hasidut in the world. And for those who may have seen it already, we sent out a Living with the Times today called In Praise of the Baal Shem Tov. So now back to this verse. This verse is promising a circumcision of the heart. Well, we know already we have the first covenant that we have is between God and Abraham, and that is the circumcision of the skin in our bodies. Brit Milah, circumcision. That is the sign of the covenant. So we have a covenant of the skin, and now we have a covenant, a circumcision of the heart. So this is also from Rav Ginsburg. He points out that if we look in the Tanakh, there are two more circumcisions. The first one, for those who want to follow, it's on page 545 in Fruits of the Orchard. So we have the circumcision of the flesh in Genesis. And then Moshe, when he first goes to Pharaoh, Pharaoh doesn't listen to him. And even the people are losing hope or patience with Moshe. Moshe came and promised them redemption. And now Pharaoh has doubled their work and things seem worse than ever. And so God comes to Moshe and says, go back to Pharaoh. And so Moshe says, behold, the children of Israel did not hearken to me. How then will Pharaoh hearken to me, seeing that I am uncircumcised lips? So here we have an idea that Moshe feels that his lips are not circumcised. And then we have one more, and that is from Jeremiah. And that is Jeremiah speaking, "To whom shall I speak and warn that they shall hearken? Behold, their ear is uncircumcised." Jeremiah is reporting to God or complaining to God, how am I going to get through to these people? Their ears are uncircumcised and they cannot listen. Behold, the word of God was a disgrace to them. They desire it not, because their ears are not circumcised. And then there's even a second here in this parsha. We have the idea of circumcising the heart, but this implies that there was a state where it was uncircumcised, and that is in Deuteronomy 10:16, where God says, "You shall circumcise the foreskin of your heart and be stiff-necked no more." So here we have 4 states of uncircumcision. Avram wasn't circumcised. So we have uncircumcised skin, uncircumcised heart, ears, and lips. And yet, Rav Ginsburg teaches that they all have a tikkun. And all the tikkunim are connected to the number 8. So how is that? So we know that circumcision is on the 8th day of a male's life. 8 days after a male is born is Brit Milah, is the circumcision. So that's on the 8th day. So according to Rav Ginsburg, so when are the lips circumcised? Moshe is saying, my lips are uncircumcised, but it's not just Moshe's lips. So Rav Ginsburg says that they're circumcised on the 8 days of Hanukkah. Why? Is because there's something very special about Hanukkah other than lighting the candles. The rabbis established that we do a full Hallel all 8 days of Sukkot. Not even on Pesach do we do a full Hallel. But the rabbis established a full Hallel all 8 days. And Hallel is to praise with our lips. And in the passage that we say after we light the candles, we say that we're lighting the candles lahodot ulahalel, l'shimcha hagadol, to give praise and thanks to your great name. So on Hanukkah, the 8 days of Hanukkah, give us a circumcised lips. What about the ears? So this is, according to Rav Ginsburg, on Shmini Atzeret, also the 8th day. Why? This is the end of the entire holiday cycle from Rosh Hashanah. Remember, in Israel, Shmini Atzeret and Simchas Torah are the same day. Outside of Israel, there are 2 separate days. There's Shmini Atzeret, and then it's followed the next day by Simchat Torah. But in Eretz Yisrael, it's on the same day. So the 8th day is what we'll call the final integration of all of the service that we've done since Rosh Hashanah. So that happens also on the 8th day. And finally, when is the circumcision of the heart? Here, God is promising it. So Rav Ginsburg says it's on Yom Kippur. What does Yom Kippur have to do with the number 8? It's the 8th day after Rosh Hashanah. There's 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. 8 days later is Yom Kippur. And what are we doing all Yom Kippur? We're hitting our heart and going over a long list of different sins and asking for forgiveness and atonement and pardon. And we do it all day long, all day long. So all of these circumcisions are happening with the number 8, the circumcision of the skin, of the lips, of the ears, and the heart. And so this is obviously, this is a great teaching for before Rosh Hashanah, that we want to contemplate how we as individuals can fix our speech, can fix our ability to listen to other people, to really hear what is being said to us, the strengthening of the covenant that God made with Avram, and maybe most important is to circumcise our hearts, to open our hearts, to fix our emotions. And as the verse that we read, B'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha, with our whole hearts and our souls, in order that we live. So this is a beautiful teaching for before Rosh Hashanah. Now, the next article in Parshat Nitzavim is called the language of the Torah. And I'm going to do this in short, but it's a very, very important idea, almost critical. Because in this parsha, in chapter 30, verse 1, excuse me, it's chapter 29, verse 27. This is before what we just learned, the passage of tshuva. And this is like the epitome, the climactic verse of exile. Vayitshem Hashem mi'al admatam, ba'af u'b'chema u'b'ketzev gadol. And God will send them away from their land in great anger and, let me just see the translation here. With fury and anger and great wrath, 3 different words of God's anger at the people for not listening to the words of the Torah, not creating a just and righteous society based on the Torah in Eretz Israel. And so God is saying that they will be sent from their land with great wrath. Vayash lichem el eretz acheret k'yom hazeh, and they will be thrust out of the land, thrust out to another land as it is today, which is hinting that this exile would last for a long time, as it has, because it hasn't ended yet, unfortunately. If you look in the Torah, the lamed of Vayash lichem, that God will cast out, will send out, will disperse Am Yisrael, is a big lamed. And this represents this idea that we were scattered quite literally to the 4 corners of the world. So this word is a big lamed, which is already the tallest of the letters, but representing this incredibly thrust away from Eretz Israel throughout the entire world. So the letter Lamed means to learn and to teach. And here we have a hint at the ultimate purpose of the exile, is God is teaching us the consequences of our actions. And we are learning, hopefully, the lesson of how we ended up in exile in the first place. That's one of the explanations why the Lamed is big. But what I want to address, and I'm going to do it in short, but it's really critical, because in this verse we have God's fury, anger, and wrath. And last Parsha, there were 98 curses. And the idea of God's anger is expressed over and over again, and not just in these Parshas. And this is a huge stumbling block for many, many people. And it's somewhat understandable. And that's why someone who really doesn't know Torah, has no oral tradition, is not grounded in Jewish tradition, and they read the Bible in English, and they could walk away thinking God is an angry, vindictive, zealot, raging God. And of course, this is very problematic, because so many people read the Bible in English with no background and no deeper understanding. So I just want to address this, head on, how we can understand this. So first of all, the Torah is written in the language of human beings. Even attaching the words anger and wrath and fury to God, these are human concepts. And even in the positive, God's love and God's compassion, these two are ways that we want to relate to God and understand God, but it's human language. And I'm going to bring a Rashi that will really help us understand this. This is in Parshat Achrei Mot in the book of Leviticus. And there it begins with the laws of Yom Kippur. All the laws of Yom Kippur are in Parshat Achrei Mot, but it starts after the death of the two sons of Aaron, who brought a offering that they were not asked to bring. So Rashi addresses, why does this parsha have to begin with the death of Nadav and Avihu? How is that connected to Yom Kippur? So it is connected very deeply, but I just want to go over this Rashi. And Rashi brings a parable. And he says, two people go to a doctor, and they're both suffering from the same ailment. The first one goes, and the doctor says, don't eat radishes, and don't be in a cold environment. That's it. The second person comes, and the doctor says, don't eat radishes, don't be in a cold environment, because if you do, you might die. So Rashi's making the point, who do you think is going to listen to the doctor more carefully? The one who was told, don't eat radishes and don't be in a cold climate, or the one who's told that if you do, you're going to die? So this is a very, very important Rashi, because it helps us understand, at least in part, the language of the Torah, which it's extreme. It's extreme. And if you go through the books of the prophets, also, the prophets are speaking the name of God, and God expresses tremendous anger when the people go and worship idols and forget the Torah and transgress and do not set up a just society. So what we have to understand, we go back to Adam and Eve. After they ate from the tree, so God, in the language of the Torah, God said the snake is cursed and the woman will be cursed in this way or that way, and Adam will be cursed. But how do we understand curse? It was clear that they were not supposed to eat from the Eitz Hadat Tov Ra, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And they were even told, if you eat from it, you will die. And they went ahead and they ate from it. In the end, Adam lived for 930 years. But death, in a sense, was brought into the world. But if we look carefully, the curse of the snake, Eve, and Adam was a result of their actions. It was a consequence of their action. But nonetheless, the Torah writes it as if God is administering a curse. But it's really the consequences. And that's why the entire book of Devarim, over and over and over again, sets up a simple formula. If you will listen to the words of the Torah, if you will follow God's instructions, if you'll be good people, you'll have nothing but blessing. You and your children, you'll be on the land forever. The land will produce, you'll be in peace, everything good. If you don't listen and you go after other gods and you don't set up a just society, then the following is going to happen to you. But many times the language is God administrating the punishments. So it's very much like a parent. A child acts totally out of line, could endanger themselves, endanger others, went over a line of morals and ethics. And a parent has to teach the child and has to sometimes punish or ground or make clear what the consequences of these actions were. And yet we know as parents, first of all, it hurts us very much to see our children acting out like this. And even the punishments, how many parents have said, you might not believe this, but this hurts me more than it hurts you. Because a parent doesn't want to punish their children, only wants the good for the child. And yet, sometimes absolutely the greatest good a parent can do is to teach the child borders, morals, ethics. So taking all of that for the reason, a little bit like Rashi said, that there is this extreme language to try to get across to us the consequences of our actions. And so someone who is reading the Bible in English with no explanation doesn't look to God as a compassionate God, doesn't understand a loving God, doesn't understand Avinu Shebashamayim, our Father in heaven, a loving parent. So we'll come to the conclusion of reading the simple words of God's wrath and fury and anger. But that wrath and fury and anger is really, God is so upset that this is how he has to teach his children. So hopefully this is at least a partial explanation. And it's so important because even people who are well versed in the Torah, when you get to these curses, it's like, oh my gosh, like it like hits the heart. It really hits deep. So hopefully this was a partial explanation, and God willing, we'll all learn, all of Israel will learn to follow God's words, and all will experience our blessings and everything good.